For nearly 40 years, the world has been grappling with the HIV and AIDS epidemic. Though the epidemic has not spared any country, without any doubt, the African continent has been the most afflicted. It is estimated that Uganda records 960 new infections every day, 50,000 every year, adding to 1.3 million people living with HIV in the entire country. Like Uganda, many countries on the continent have made great strides in fighting HIV, but despite these achievements, stigma, discrimination, gender inequality, violence, and other human rights violations continue to make people vulnerable to the epidemic and hinder access to HIV services. Now, the African Commission on Human Rights and People's Rights has released a report highlighting the specific human rights violations and challenges people living with HIV have to grapple with. Young people, children, prisoners, sex workers, people who use drugs, gay men, and men who have sex with men, and transgender persons. So that although generally progress has been made in addressing HIV in the African region, but this key population are still left behind.
We have dedicated clinics for key populations, where men who have sex with men, sex workers, and persons who inject drugs. The different representatives from civil society organizations shared their views about the challenges in the fight against HIV in Uganda and the impact it has caused on the population.
And as human rights, we are concerned with some particular sections of the law, especially those which criminalize certain issues. And we feel this is a hindrance to treatment of HIV/AIDS.
Increased numbers of orphans and child-headed households. We also still have these issues in Uganda. Then also disruption of schooling, especially for girls. And also the adverse effects on economic activity due to loss of human capital.
The director of International Community of Women Living with HIV in East Africa argues that Uganda and other African countries should stop putting the burden of the disease on foreigners or donors.
To the extent that when somebody gives you money, they determine which program you're going to implement. There's no way I can give you money and then you tell me this is where you're going to put the money.
So what needs to be done to address some of the listed challenges?
Give us an affidavit, write a letter in support to the court and say that even at our level of the African Commission, we advise that this law be reviewed.
On many occasions, several civil society organizations and other key stakeholders have recommended that the government of Uganda amends the HIV and AIDS Control and Prevention Act 2014 in order to remove the caps that undermine the human rights. However, it's not clear whether this time round the government of Uganda and other countries in Africa will heed to the recommendations made by the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. Sudil Yarhanga, NTV.